What's up, everyone? Back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing yet another beer from the Bell's Brewery, and they're out of both Kalamazoo and Comstock, Michigan, and this is their Cold Hearted. So they're calling this one a Cold IPA. It comes in at 7% alcohol by volume. No IBUs listed in time of review. This bottle is approximately 6.5 weeks old. So a new beer from Bell's. They actually released a variety pack here in 2022 called the Box of Hearts, and they had the classic two-hearted, the what is the low-cal two-hearted called? I forget the name of it. They had that one in there. They also have a black IPA called Black Hearted, and they had this one. Now, I did not grab that variety pack. I actually grabbed this one in a mix of 6-pack. It was, I think there was 2 bottles of this left, and I was just like, I gotta try it, a cold IPA. So as far as I know, when it comes to cold IPAs, I always thought that they were warm fermented with ale yeast, but they would usually use like a lighter malt that you would use in a lager, like Pilsner malt, and then also lager yeast. But on the back here, they say for this one, it says, under the frozen lake swims a fish that's different from any we've seen before. Dry hop with Centennial during a cold fermentation. This drinkable cold IPA is crisp and refreshing. And then they say tasting notes, and at the end it says, it's not bad being a little cold hearted. So I don't know if this is kind of like a Kolsch that is very similar, where I believe they warm ferment that with ale yeast, and then they lager it. I don't know. I don't know if this should be considered an IPL. They call it a cold IPA, so I'm going to go with Bell's on this one. I don't know that much about the style. There's not a lot of cold IPAs out there. I've had maybe like 3 or 4 of them, and they're pretty interesting. Anyway, we are going to pour this one out. 6.5 weeks old, relatively fresh, and let's get into it. So here we go. So this is the first beer of the Shelfie beers I'm reviewing for the month of March 2022. I brought them back after a 1.5-year hiatus, and yeah, this fits the bill. Even though this is technically maybe not a Shelfie, because it's just in that Box of Hearts variety pack, it's still a Shelfie because it's Bell's, and everyone can get Bell's. Anyway, so that is pretty clear. There is a little bit of haze, but it's pretty filtered for the most part. Some decent bubbles, not a ton of carbonation bubbles. Has about a third of a off-white looking head, but that looks like an old school like IPA, to be honest with you. Has that like orange yellow color, and yeah, just looks like an old school American IPA, kind of like Two Hearted to some degree. Let's get nose. So that's interesting. It really does smell like an IPL. I'm getting this nice crisp kind of nose, a little bit of lager funk. Like if I was doing this blind, I would right off the top of the dome piece, I would think this is an IPL because it has nice citrus tones. There's white grapefruit, a little bit of like a rindy orange. But then there's a big blast of pine on the back end. It's basically picture, I guess, Two Hearted, but as a lager. That's kind of what I'm getting. And that's probably what they're going for, to be honest with you. The malt character is a little caramel, like kind of bready thing going on. It's not super aromatic. It's pretty much what I expected it to be. There's caramel, there's a breadiness from the malt, there's that white grapefruit and like orange rind, some pine, and that's pretty much it. Very simplistic nose, but it smells pretty good. Again, it smells like an old school IPA, but in like IPL form. That's kind of what I'm getting. Anyway, let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. Yeah. So it's pretty much what it is, honestly. Body of this one is just a touch under medium. The mouthfeel, it's super crisp, really effervescent on the palate. Lots of spritzy carbonation. It's pretty clean. There's a lingering bitterness on the back of the palate. It's super refreshing though. Like this, I just kind of want to keep on going back for more. So the flavors here aren't spectacular. They're not mind-blowing. It's not super complex. But I don't think this beer is meant to be. Right at the forefront, bready caramel malt. It slides underneath the palate. And then my palate is attacked by white grapefruit and orange rind zestiness. And that really sweeter citrus fruits. Halfway through the palate, there's a pop of like a peach maybe. Yeah, like a slight peach or like mango. Some kind of stone fruit. And that's, honestly, that's like the only sweetness fruit-wise I get out of this. And then on the back of the palate, pretty much I'd say about 3/4 of the way to the finish, there's this nice resiny pine kind of finish. So again, this is old school. If you've had Two Hearted, it's an Old School IPA. So I think this basically has characteristics of Two Hearted, but it drinks more like a lager. It's so crisp. I would say more of like a bready malt character. I said caramel and bread, but I would say it's more bready than anything. Super easy to drink, 7%. No way. I would guess like maybe like 5.5, 6 if I was doing this blind. This is solid. Is it as good as Two Hearted? No, it's not for me. But I would say this. I think if you wanted something, I think it's more refreshing than Two Hearted, if that makes any sense to anybody out there. It's just really refreshing. And the finish of that like semi-dry, moderate bitterness makes it super drinkable. This beer doesn't have a lot of sweet components. So if you're somebody who likes Old School IPAs, you would really dig this one, especially if you like lagers. If you're somebody who, digs a Two Hearted or like a 60 or 90 minute from Dogfish Head, but you're also crushing like Helles lagers nowadays, I think this is a great marriage of the two. It kind of drinks more like an IPL to me. But yeah, not much more to say about it. Very simplistic. It's pretty much what I expected it to be. It's nothing amazing, so I'm not going to go real high on this one. I think, like, stylistically, what they went for, probably like a 4.25, 4.3. But for my own personal preference, Cold Hearted from Bell's, I'm going to give that a low 4 out of 5 and go 3.9 out of 5. I think that's a fair score for what I'm drinking. Nothing amazing, but I'm glad I picked it up and gave it a try. Now I wish I would have saw the Black Hearted because I have not reviewed that, or I shouldn't. Of course I didn't. I think they just released it. But out of the beers in that box of Hearts variety pack, I reviewed, I'm pretty sure, Two Hearted. I did the low-cal one. I forget whatever name it is. It's like, I'm trying to think of the name and I can't. I don't know. I don't remember. If anybody out there remembers it, let me know. But Black Hearted would be all the reviews from the variety box. And yeah, if I see it, maybe I'll give it a go. Price and availability. I have no idea what the price point of the variety box is. If it's a 12 pack, you're probably looking at, $20 or maybe like $18 or something like that for it. Probably not that expensive. I got this in a mix of sixer and it was, I believe, $10.99 for the mixed 6-pack, so less than $2 for a bottle of this, so fine by me. And availability, wherever you see Bell's, you probably should see that box, and you might see some singles like I did. I picked this up at a local Wegmans grocery store, and like I said, there was a couple left, and I grabbed one because I was like, hey, relatively fresh, new release from Bell's, let me give it a go. So if you've had this one before, let me know what you think about it. Like I said, going into this review, I tried not to go in with preconceived notions, but at the end of the day, a beer like this, I kind of know what they were going to go for, and I think they achieved it, but I pretty much knew that it wasn't going to be something that's going to blow me away and be my favorite. But I will say, I like the lager-esque component to this one, where it's so crisp and refreshing on the palate. You can definitely tell. Again, if I was doing this blind, I would call it an IPL, but I'm not doing it blind, so it's a cold IPA. At the end of the day, none of it really matters. So again, if you've had this one before, post in the comment section. Appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. To the next one. Cheers.